Welcome to today's video. This is the fourth in a series of 5 videos on field testing legal documents. In today's video, you'll learn how to recruit participants, select people for your focus group team, and how to conduct the actual testing. My name is Maria Mindlin. I'm a linguist and readability expert at Transcend. Transcend is a small company in Northern California, and we provide language services in English and other languages as well. On this project, I've been working with Anna Heinlein of LawNY and Mary Zimmerman of Idaho Legal Aid to create this video series, which was funded by an LSC TIG grant. This same TIG grant has also funded other plain language and readability tools and projects that you can find at writeclearly.org. Let's quickly go over what we've learned so far with the previous videos. In the first one, we learned how to create a highly readable text that we believe will do a good job of explaining our most important messages. We know, especially from Professor Wydick, that this is text that is clear, concise, and of course it's correct. In the second video, we learned how to create an instrument for this particular project. The instrument, of course, is what tells us if the readers actually understood what we had identified as the most important messages. So the instrument is a number of things. It's your script, it's what you're saying and reading to your focus group participants, and it's also your questions. You'll see in today's video, it's also the place where we're recording our data. All right, for the last video, we talked about pre-testing and why it was so important to pre-test and how it lets you not only rehearse so that you feel comfortable when you get to the actual test, but you can make some significant improvements sometimes on your actual text that you're testing and on your instrument as well. Let's talk about who we're going to recruit. And I'll give you a little hint. We're not going to recruit our children, our relatives, our neighbors. What we want to do is recruit people who match the profile of our typical consumers, and specifically the intended consumers of this particular document. We want the recruits to also contain members of populations that we know are underserved. So for instance, you might have an awareness that you want to do a better job at reaching out to certain populations, such as a disability population, or a minority language population, or an ethnic minority. So if that's your goal, you want to make sure that you include people from those categories as well. We've talked about how we're going to do a small focus group, and you have to remember that we only have 8 spots. So we want a lot of different types of people, so you have to make every person really try to count and represent a certain slice of the populations that you're targeting. That means people of different ages, educational literacy backgrounds, different primary languages, ethnic or racial backgrounds, gender, and income levels, as long as those income levels are within the range of your target audience for your text. Let's talk about how to recruit. And first, I'd like to say, please don't be discouraged if initially it takes a bit of time to figure out where and how. It won't take long before you have a nice database of people that you find are really great at this focus group thing and have wonderful comments that help make your document better. But initially, you're going to have to go out and look for them. And the way that we look for them at Transcend is we like to go to places where people are typically waiting. That makes them a little bit happier to speak to people because they may be there not doing too much of anything. And it also doesn't interfere with any activity that's going on in that immediate environment. So often we go to health clinics, unemployment offices, social services offices. So you would need to explore what resources you have in your particular area. Before we go out to those places, we want to make sure that who's ever in charge of the health clinic or social services office, whatever it happens to be, knows about us, knows that we're going, knows why that we're going. And in our experience with as many focus groups as we've done, we've never had someone tell us, no, you can't go. On the contrary, they tend to say things like, oh, you should come on Tuesday. Tuesday would be a great time to do this because there's always lots of people. Or they might give you hints about the best time of day to come or times that you want to avoid. So let's say you're out there now and you know where to go and you've got your permission to go there. So now it's your job to approach people. You can do this on your own. You can take someone from your office with you. And you should have a clipboard or some easy way of recording information. And we give them basically the same basic talk. We say, we work with, and then our agency name. We give them our business card. Then we say, we're working on creating a form or a brochure or a website or whatever it happens to be. And we want people to get important information that they may need. Here it's important not to say what the topic of the focus group will be about. You don't want to give anybody the opportunity to study it, to review it, to discuss it with their family at home. So let's keep it a clean and fresh experience for everyone. So just information, important information to people. And would you like to join us? It's going to be on this particular date at this time. We pay you, and it's a lot of fun. If the person happens to say no, but they seem to be interested, you want to go ahead and take their information anyway. You might be able to use them. And so we're building our database, and this way it's going to be easier for you to bring in people for your next focus group. Let me show you the demographic information that we collect from them. This may seem a little spare, but this really does it for us. We ask them for their name, phone number, email. Many people in the target groups that we go after don't have emails, so it's especially important to get the right telephone number and anticipate when you're going to be calling to confirm, to make sure someone will be there. You want to find out what their first language is, what the last grade they completed at school, and of course also their gender. We talked about telling them that we're going to pay them, and it's lots of fun. The pay part is very important in a number of ways. And if you've been reading your focus group kit that we recommended in the last video, you'll know that they aren't big on paying people to be a part of a focus group. We take a different approach to it. And for us, part of approaching people and bringing people into a focus group is that we want to make sure that they understand that we really value their participation. We look at it as a very an important sort of professional set of opinions that they're giving us in terms of representing whoever they happen to be representing. And we find that paying people sets the right tone. You're not here because you're being nice to us. You're here to do this very important job, and we're going to pay you something that is at the right level for the seriousness of this job. And it, without saying all those things, of course we never say those things, it really sets the right tone. We know that for a small focus group, for a small document, they'll probably be there for 1.5 hours. We tell them we're going to be paying them $50 in cash. It might be that you're recruiting from somewhere that who's ever in charge of the organization where you're recruiting from doesn't want to give you cash. That's happened to us once. In those cases, what we do is we give them a $50 gift card from the supermarket that most people tend to use in that particular area, and that works just as well. The amount of $50 accomplishes a few things. First of all, it's enough money for people in the demographic that we're usually going after to really encourage them to say, oh yeah, wow, this is great, and let me move my schedule around a little bit, or yeah, I'll definitely come. And as well, as we mentioned before, it really conveys the seriousness of this is a job, this is an important job, and that's why we're paying you this amount of money. We really want you to come, and we really want to hear what you have to say. It also makes it much easier for you to schedule people rather than constantly trying to round up volunteers. I didn't mention on the last slide, and I'd like to just throw it in right now, you don't pay people, of course, when you recruit them. You pay them at the end of the focus group. What we do is we take cash and we put it in an envelope with each person's name on it, and then one of the focus group team members will hand it out as she says goodbye to people and thanks them for coming. Being able to have that one-on-one opportunity is also another way of, if you spot some people that are just wonderful and have rich comments and very thoughtful in the way that they approach the focus group, you might want to say, could we call you if we have other focus groups, and confirm their contact information, and that will give them a little heads up that you might be contacting them. Okay, so in terms of what you want to do before you have the focus group, is that you want to contact them to confirm that they're coming. You don't want it to be, you want to do this on the evening before, and you don't want the evening before to be a long time since you last saw them. It's important to keep everything fresh in order to get the highest turnout possible. So you might think of recruiting on a Wednesday or a Thursday and having the focus group on a Monday or Tuesday. And that way everything is very current and you get the best responses in terms of people's availability. So call them in the evening or email them and get their confirmation by email if you have that the evening before, to confirm they're going to come, to explain to them that it's important for them to come on time. And we tell them that the reason it's so important for you to come on time is that we need to look at things in a group. So we have to have you all together at the same time before we can really start. And we'll tell them that it'll take about 2 hours. We know that it actually may take a little bit less than 2 hours. We mentioned before, we talked about it being a 1 hour, 1.25, 1.5 hours to have the best focus group, so everything is very energized and peppy, and you don't have people sort of wandering, and they really stay on task. But it's good to tell people that it takes 2 hours, and that's because they'll be very happy if it takes less time. And also, you may have some glitch that happens and you could actually go to 2 hours. So it's much better to give yourself that window of 2 hours. We thank people again when we speak to them to confirm the appointment, and that we really appreciate your taking the time to come and look at this important document with us and give you your opinions. All right, let's talk about now what you have to do to get your space ready. And I'd like to say that I think it's very important to have all these steps taken care of before people come. When people start arriving, you really want to give them your complete attention, and it's welcoming people to your home, to your office, whatever it happens to be. It takes a certain amount of one-on-one, 100% attention in terms of interacting with them. And you also want to show them, how organized and ready you are. So in terms of readying your space, the steps are very simple. You want to make sure you have a chair for each person who's coming, and a space at the table for them to write on. That's not so cramped that they won't be able to write at the same time that other people are writing. So it doesn't matter if it's small, but it needs to be enough. It's very important to have a mock-up of whatever you're testing ready to go. And this is not only for the focus group test, but for the pre-test as well. And mock-ups are not like the old days when they used to be very tedious and expensive to produce. If you have a brochure or a flyer or a web page that you're looking at, anything, you can have your mock-up done at Kinko's or at Vistaprint for a very small amount of money, perhaps $20, $25, and you'll be able to get enough printouts to be able to share with everyone, so they can really get a good flavor of what you intend the document to actually look like. You don't want them to have to imagine, oh well, we're going to format it, or okay, we're going to put a graphic in there, but we just haven't found one. You really are putting your best piece forward for them. You also want to make sure that you have pens and highlighters for everyone. What we do is we tend to put these in, we have a circular table that we use, and we put them right in the middle so we don't spend or waste time handing things out. They can just grab one when they're ready to grab it. And we talked last time about how we use the yellow highlighters for our very important question that we always ask in all focus groups. And I hope some of you remember that we say something to the effect of, well, let's look at this brochure. And I'm wondering if there's any words or parts of this brochure that might be difficult for some people. So even if it's a word or a phrase that's easy for you to understand, you think it might be difficult for other people. So go ahead and take your yellow highlighters and just take a minute or two and go over the document again and use your yellow highlighter for anything that you think would be difficult for some people. So highlighters are great, and that will be part of your report, finding words that people may find difficult. And of course, as we mentioned before, it's a wonderful way of not making someone say, well, I don't understand this word and I don't understand that word. but you tend to get words that they tend to come in clusters that several people at the table will find a series of words, and it's very thought-provoking for the writers. Right at the door, when people come in, we have someone standing by with a stack of address labels and markers so that we can make sure that each person has a name tag on their lapel area. And of course, the focus group team would also already have their name tags on, so they're also easily identifiable to the people in the focus group participants. Everything should be comfortable. Cozy is good. In fact, it may be great. I know for us, we think it's okay for things to be a little bit tight as long as everyone can still do what they need to do. And we also think that it might be better than going and renting a fancy conference room in a hotel that just doesn't have the right atmosphere for the type of closeness and conversations that we want people to have. So comfortable, cozy is okay. You'll want to have available some extra chairs. Once in a while, especially moms show up with their kids, and you don't want it to be an obstacle. And so, if the children are young, you can have them play with some toys in a nice little area of your room. If you get a 10-year-old child that you want to make sure is with you and entertained, so the mom isn't distracted during the focus group period, you can say something like, "Well, young man, why don't you pull up a chair too, and let's see what you have to say about this," and just encourage them to be with you. And it will be very interesting to see what kind of responses they get. We wouldn't intentionally recruit people, children, but their responses can be especially interesting because often children are the representatives of people with lower literacy levels, people who may not speak English well. So they have a special role in those kinds of families. Please make sure that you have a clock. The facilitator will need to be able to easily see a clock without having to constantly turn around from the group. And it will be the observer's job to keep track of time. If before you go into the actual focus group, you and the observer will want to have a system worked out. He or she might tap a watch to give you a reminder of time, or you could have a little bell at certain points. Whatever seems to be reasonable and works well for you will be fine. And here's something that may not seem that important initially, but it actually is. And as we mentioned before, the note taker and the observer aren't sitting right next to our participants. They should be in the background. So they're in the background in terms of noise and participation. They're in the background also physically. So they're sitting a bit away. They probably won't have access to a table. But both of them are going to be very busy making notes and watching. And having a clipboard it's the way to go in terms of being able to be very independent, take quick notes, and we've talked about how important it is for the focus groups to move fairly quickly to keep everything going. So they need all the tools that they have to keep things going. And the facilitator, of course, should have one to hold the instrument and the test document. So switching now to what the note taker and the observer have to have. While the focus group participants are responding to the questions, They have to have an instrument that works well to recording comments. They have to have a copy of the mock-up as well. We talked before about how important it is that they have read it, they understand it, they know where all the text is so that you can very quickly make marks. Someone might make a comment about a particular word and you might want to circle it. Someone might say, oh, why didn't you say that in the beginning? It's so important. And so you could quickly put a circle around it as a note taker and draw an arrow to where it has to go. So you have to be very quick and efficient at making your notes, so that you would never want to slow the focus group down because you're taking a longer time to take your notes. For the facilitator, same thing. You'd want to have the document as well as your instrument. And we've talked before about how it's not the facilitator's job to take the notes. The facilitator has to be 100% focused on the focus group participants. But you will want to have them available to you, perhaps to point to a certain area or to use as a manipulative when you're saying, well, what do you think of this back part, and turn it over to the back. Or if someone says something very interesting that you might want to come back later, you want to be able to circle that and be able to use it later. And we've talked a few times now about a suitable instrument. So let's look at the document that we've been talking about and see how that translates into something suitable. So here again, we have our language access document. As you remember, we always start off with reading interest. We want to see if the focus group participants can quickly tell. We give them 30 seconds to tell us, what is this about? Who is this for? And we know from reading observation studies that if you can't answer those questions very quickly, you're not likely to even read it. So these are questions that are always asked. When we prepare our instrument, it can be a great time saver to anticipate some of those answers. We don't want to have to be a court reporter and know all the shorthand techniques. So as much as we can get our instrument ready to be efficient, the easier it will be for us when we're in the actual group. So looking at this flyer, we know that people might say this is about language rights, this is about needing an interpreter, this is about your rights that you have, or where you could get an interpreter, or how to complain about an interpreter. So there's a number of things that people might say. For our first question, we could set it up something like this. And as you can see, this is not a very fancy format. It's just very efficient. So we put the answers that we think probably people will give us. And as people start answering, we can put check marks in each of the boxes. It's okay for people to say more than one thing. We're not limiting them to say just one thing. And so we have a very fast way of taking down the data. Already you could imagine how interesting this data could be. For instance, in this language access piece that's largely focused on you can get an interpreter at most public offices if you need one. So let's say we ask that, and of our 8 people, we only have 1 who says this is about getting an interpreter. And you find there's a lot of blank spaces on what we hoped they would identify as the most important parts. So immediately we're getting some feedback about, yes, you are on target, no, you aren't on target. So it's very interesting, and it's a very powerful tool in terms of seeing how our reader sees what we create. Okay, here we're going to talk about your focus group team. as facilitator, note taker, and observer. And we've talked a little bit about the facilitator definitely not being someone that, if they were the author of the document, that wouldn't be open to suggestions. And but in addition, I would say that we've had the best results when we have a facilitator who's calm and without being ploddingly slow, has a very deliberate pace. The facilitator should be someone who's genuinely kind, comfortable with doing this role, good at making other people feel comfortable as well, and someone who will really stick to the script and not go off into tangents. The note taker should have different types of qualities. Of course, the most important one, really good at taking efficient notes. She will have to be able to take down a lot in a very quick way. And as an example, I'd be a terrible note taker because my handwriting is, after all these years, still awful. And even if it was only a half an hour time that went by, I'm sure I'd have lots of things that I couldn't read in my own handwriting. So someone who's good at taking notes, is careful, and very focused, a good listener, so they can really hear what other people are saying. The whole process will be much more efficient if this note taker can also do track changes, so we can get the team to participate in the final report without making it overly difficult. Observer should be someone thoughtful, very comfortable about staying in the background, and also stepping in if something is needed logistically. If someone comes in all of a sudden and you need an extra chair, well, you don't want the facilitator and the note taker stepping out, so she would do that. And so any of these last minute things. Where should you get these people from? In my opinion, they should be from your organization. There's nothing like changing your culture of writing than having your own focus group team. It will be absolutely amazing, and I think that it will be a wonderful experience for these 3 people to have. And it, of course, also helps you to keep your costs down, which is good. But more importantly, the learning that you'll get from doing this will be just amazing. Okay, we're getting close to our end here. And let me tell you about the 2 different types of people that you might have to try special techniques with. If you have someone who's quiet and shy, you want to call them by their name. The first time you call them, ask them a question that's not too hard. Anna, do you agree with Bob? If you're in likes and dislikes, you can say, well, which parts did you like, Anna? You also want to be able to be fast at questions and make questions that are easy to answer. Bob says that linguístico is a difficult word. Who else thinks that this is a difficult word? Would you raise your hand? So this is an answer that everybody can easily give. And once you get going, people will participate really very willingly, and it will be a fun experience for everybody. Another way to quickly get through your instrument and keep things at a nice pace is to go around the table once in a while. So you could say, let's say we're at, who do you think this flyer is for? Let's start with Florencia, and then we'll go around this way. So you don't have to stop and, every time call a different person. Who haven't I called? Who have I called? And basically what you're doing is you're mixing up the questioning techniques. You might be doing the hand raising, you might be doing going around the table, doing it at random, and all this keeps the focus group going reasonably fast, makes it more interesting for people. People don't get into this little rut or routine. So how you question will draw in these shy people, but it will also keep a very nice pace going for you. Let's talk about people who might be difficult, and I don't think it will be too much of a problem. We really haven't had anyone who was very difficult. I think the most typical issues that come up is if you have someone who wants to go on and on about their personal experience, and right away you have to just nip that and say, oh wow, okay, let's talk about that right after the group. Or if someone has a comment and they're getting off track, don't wait for them to finish their comment or their story or their whatever. You have your polite, calm, very measured facilitator who say, oh, I really don't want to interrupt you, but let's finish these questions first, and then we can talk more afterwards. So have a variety of things that you know that you can say that sound very nice and they're not off-putting, and that they welcome the person's extra information, but not during your focus group, and things will go a lot smoother. Well, we're at the end of this video, and I hope it's been useful. You'll find that when you're out there doing your focus group, it is amazingly fun. So hopefully these tips will help you to keep it going quickly and to give you some rich feedback. So next time we're going to do video 5, which is our last video. We're going to learn when you should write your report, how to write your report, again using a template, so you're going to make it easy on yourself and your team, how to edit your report, and how to revise and finalize your report. And that's the end of video 4. Thank you all for being with us today, and I look forward to seeing you for video 5. Thank you.